There are days when life seems ordinary on the outside, yet something inside you refuses to settle. You move through your routine, answer messages, finish responsibilities, and still there is a lingering feeling that something important is approaching. If that sensation has been following you recently, today may reveal why. On June 24th, the moon enters Scorpio, and with that shift comes an atmosphere that rarely allows secrets to remain untouched. Scorpio energy has never been interested in appearances. It seeks what lies beneath them. It pulls attention toward motivations, hidden emotions, unfinished stories, and truths that have quietly shaped events from the shadows. What makes this moment especially significant is not the moon's movement alone. It is the larger sequence of planetary events that has been unfolding throughout June. Viewed separately, each alignment carries its own meaning. Viewed together, they resemble a carefully unfolding process that has been preparing something much larger. The story began on June 1st when Mercury entered Cancer. Communication started taking on a different tone. Many people noticed themselves becoming more sensitive to what was left unsaid. Conversations carried emotional layers that could not be ignored. Words spoken casually seemed to linger longer than expected. Memories resurfaced. Old discussions gained new meaning. It was as though the collective mind shifted away from surface-level thinking and toward emotional interpretation. Then came June 9th, when Venus and Jupiter joined together in Cancer. Astrologers often regard this as one of the most supportive combinations for emotional growth, connection, affection, and abundance. Yet expansion does not discriminate. Whatever already exists becomes larger. Bonds become stronger. Desires become clearer. Expectations become more powerful. Family dynamics, emotional attachments, and personal investments all gained additional weight beneath the surface. As the month progressed, the energy became harder to ignore. On June 17th, Venus in Leo formed an opposition to Pluto. This alignment has a reputation for exposing what has been operating behind the scenes. Situations involving control, imbalance, obsession, or hidden motives often become impossible to overlook. Relationships that appeared stable may suddenly reveal underlying tensions. Emotional truths demand recognition. Masks begin to slip. Just 2 days later, another major shift arrived. On June 19th, Chiron moved from Aries into Taurus. Chiron is frequently associated with healing through awareness of deeper wounds. In Taurus, attention turns toward themes of security, self-worth, physical well-being, resources, and stability. Questions that may have been quietly living beneath the surface become more difficult to avoid. Am I safe? Am I valued? Do I have enough? Am I enough? These concerns are not created by Chiron. Rather, Chiron illuminates where healing is still required. Each of these developments has contributed to the atmosphere surrounding today. Mercury has been reshaping emotional perception. Venus and Jupiter expanded attachments. Pluto challenged illusions. Chiron highlighted vulnerabilities connected to security and value. Layer upon layer, the pressure has been building. Now the moon enters Scorpio during the early hours of June 24th, acting less like the beginning of a story and more like the moment when the story reaches a turning point. Scorpio is often misunderstood because people focus on its intensity while overlooking its purpose. Its purpose is revelation. It wants authenticity. It wants what is real. It wants the truth beneath the performance. When Scorpio energy becomes active, many individuals discover that they can no longer maintain emotional distance from matters that truly affect them. This is why the atmosphere may feel different. The moon passes through Scorpio regularly, and many times the experience remains manageable. Emotions become stronger. Intuition becomes sharper. Hidden feelings rise closer to the surface. Yet the current transit arrives while multiple planetary themes are already active. Instead of operating alone, it interacts with energies that have been developing throughout the entire month. Imagine a situation where numerous conversations, realizations, emotional reactions, and unanswered questions have been accumulating behind a closed door. Eventually, the pressure becomes too great to contain. The door opens, not because anyone forced it open, but because keeping it closed is no longer possible. That is the deeper symbolism surrounding this Scorpio moon. For some people, the revelation may involve relationships. For others, finances, self-worth, family dynamics, or personal direction. The specific topic differs from person to person. What remains consistent is the invitation to see clearly. And clarity is not always comfortable at first. There are moments when awareness arrives before understanding. Your mind may still be searching for explanations, while another part of you already senses that change is approaching. That inner awareness is often what people describe as intuition. It appears before evidence. It speaks before logic catches up. As this Scorpio moon unfolds, many will discover that what they have been feeling for weeks was not random at all. The emotional pressure, the unusual sensitivity, the sense that something beneath the surface was shifting, all of it has been part of a larger process. And as we move deeper into the meaning of this transit, the role Scorpio plays in exposing hidden realities becomes even more important to understand. What makes this Scorpio moon so impossible to ignore is that it refuses to cooperate with denial. The energy moving through the sky now has no interest in helping anyone maintain comforting illusions or emotional escape routes. Scorpio is concerned with what remains after every excuse has been stripped away. It does not negotiate with avoidance, and it certainly does not reward the habit of looking the other way when something deep inside already knows the truth. That is why many people experience this transit as a profound internal confrontation. Suddenly, the explanations that once felt convincing begin to lose their power. The stories you have repeated to yourself in order to stay comfortable no longer fit as neatly as they once did. The emotional compromises, the rationalizations, the quiet agreements you made with yourself to postpone difficult realizations all begin to unravel. Scorpio energy functions like a searchlight aimed beneath the surface of consciousness. Rather than accepting appearances, it follows emotional clues into hidden territory. It uncovers frustrations that were never spoken aloud, disappointments that were buried beneath obligation, and anxieties that have quietly shaped decisions without your awareness. What emerges under this influence is rarely new. More often, it is something that has been present for a very long time, waiting for the right moment to demand recognition. This is one reason the transit can feel surprisingly draining. Your mind is not only processing present circumstances, it is sorting through emotional material accumulated over weeks, months, and in some cases even years. The body often becomes the first messenger. You may notice a strange heaviness, a persistent tension, or an exhaustion that seems disconnected from physical activity. No matter how much rest you get, something deeper continues working beneath the surface because an important internal review is underway. Adding to the intensity is the fact that the moon is moving through its waxing gibbous phase, approaching approximately 78% illumination as it advances toward the full moon in Capricorn on June 29th. This detail matters because the purpose of this transit is not simply revelation, it is preparation. The spotlight is being directed toward whatever inner distortion continues to interfere with your growth. The essential question emerging now is simple but uncomfortable. What belief, assumption, or self-deception is standing between you and the path you are meant to follow? Under these conditions, weaknesses in your emotional foundation become impossible to overlook. Any attempt to ignore them now only guarantees a more forceful confrontation when the Capricorn full moon arrives. The next 48 hours become especially significant because the Scorpio moon is not acting independently. Instead, it moves through a highly active network of planetary influences that unfold in rapid succession, creating an atmosphere that feels both psychologically demanding and deeply transformative. Shortly after the Moon enters Scorpio, the Sun, at 2 degrees Cancer, forms an exact trine to the lunar node. This is not an ordinary alignment. It carries a distinctly karmic tone, suggesting that whatever is revealed during this period serves a larger purpose. Information that comes to light, conversations that shift your perspective, and realizations that suddenly become impossible to dismiss are not appearing by accident. They are emerging because they are connected to your future direction. There is a sense that life is placing an important piece of the puzzle directly in front of you. Even if what you discover initially feels uncomfortable, something inside recognizes that the revelation is necessary. This aspect creates the courage required to face truths that previously felt overwhelming, because on a deeper level, you understand that growth depends upon honesty. Then, on June 25th, another influence arrives, as Venus in Leo forms a trine with Saturn in Aries. If the Scorpio Moon acts like a force that removes what is false, this Venus-Saturn connection acts like a force that strengthens what is genuine. While emotional illusions are being challenged, authentic bonds and meaningful commitments reveal their resilience. Relationships capable of withstanding pressure become more clearly defined. Promises supported by action prove their value. Stability emerges not through fantasy, but through demonstrated integrity. This alignment favors sincerity, accountability, and emotional maturity. It rewards those willing to communicate openly and stand behind their words. In many ways, it becomes a reminder that truth does not only expose weaknesses, it also confirms strengths. Yet the atmosphere becomes more complicated later that same day when the Sun forms a square to Neptune. This is where uncertainty enters the picture. Neptune introduces confusion, blurring the distinction between accurate perception and wishful thinking. Situations may appear more secure than they truly are. Individuals may seem more trustworthy than they have earned the right to be. Attractive possibilities can conceal significant flaws. This creates one of the most psychologically challenging moments within the entire sequence, because two opposing forces are operating simultaneously. Scorpio seeks complete honesty, while Neptune obscures clarity. The temptation during this phase is to retreat into comforting narratives rather than face uncomfortable realities. Whether the issue involves a relationship, a financial concern, or a professional situation that has gradually become unhealthy, denial may appear easier than confrontation. Yet the Scorpio Moon continues demanding deeper investigation. It encourages scrutiny rather than assumption. It urges you to look beyond appearances, examine details carefully, ask additional questions, and refuse explanations that leave important pieces missing. Finally, on June 26th, the Sun forms a quincunx to Pluto, creating the last major adjustment before the Moon completes its journey through Scorpio. This aspect introduces a feeling of misalignment that cannot be ignored. Internal emotions and external realities may seem temporarily out of sync. There is an awareness that something must be adjusted, refined, or released in order to move forward. The sensation can be uncomfortable, much like continuing to wear something that no longer fits. Yet that discomfort serves a purpose, because it highlights exactly where change is required before the next chapter begins. The tension does not begin to ease until the Moon shifts into Sagittarius during the middle of the afternoon on June 26th. At that point, the emotional intensity starts to loosen its grip, and many people will finally feel as though they can breathe again. Yet the weight that disappears is not the same as the knowledge that remains. What is uncovered during these days cannot simply be forgotten. Once awareness arrives, life rarely returns to the version that existed before it. That is why this transit matters. It is not creating new realities. It is revealing realities that were already there, waiting to be acknowledged. Many people assume that when Scorpio energy becomes active, The revelations must involve dramatic secrets, hidden betrayals, dishonesty, or shocking discoveries involving other people. Certainly, situations like that can emerge under a Scorpio moon. However, the most important revelation often has nothing to do with what someone else concealed. The deeper story involves what is being concealed within your own consciousness. Think back to that strange feeling that may have been following you recently, the pressure in your chest, the sense that something important was approaching even though you could not identify it. That sensation was not random. Your deeper awareness was detecting something long before your logical mind was prepared to accept it. The Scorpio moon has a unique way of exposing internal contradictions. It shines a light on truths that have been present all along, but repeatedly pushed aside. The process unfolds in stages. The first stage often centers around relationships. During this period, words alone lose their power. Energy becomes more convincing than language. If someone consistently says one thing while demonstrating another through their actions, the mismatch becomes impossible to overlook. Scorpio seeks alignment between what is spoken and what is real. Any relationship sustained by avoidance, convenience, or unspoken compromises may suddenly feel unstable because the underlying imbalance can no longer remain hidden. What once seemed manageable now demands attention. This is not punishment, it is clarity. And clarity creates the possibility of genuine change. The second stage reaches into questions of value, security, and material well-being. With Chiron having recently entered Taurus, attention has already shifted toward concerns involving money, self-respect, stability, and personal worth. Because Taurus and Scorpio sit opposite one another, this moon activates those themes with remarkable intensity. Old assumptions about what you deserve begin rising to the surface. Limiting beliefs that once operated quietly in the background become visible. Perhaps there is a belief that accepting less is safer than asking for more. Perhaps there is a story that your value depends entirely on how much you give, how much you endure, or how much you sacrifice. Perhaps there is a professional situation that has been draining your spirit for a long time, yet familiarity convinced you to remain. Under this moon, those narratives lose their ability to hide. You begin seeing them for what they truly are. The third stage reaches even deeper. It touches a pattern that many people do not recognize until they are forced to examine it. Throughout this month, the strong Cancer influence has encouraged emotional caretaking and protection. While those qualities can be beautiful, they also carry a shadow side. Some individuals become trapped in the belief that they must continuously rescue others in order to earn love, loyalty, or security. They give endlessly, fix endlessly, and carry responsibilities that were never theirs to carry. The Scorpio moon exposes the hidden motivations beneath that pattern. It asks difficult questions. Are you helping because it is healthy? Or because you fear what will happen if you stop? Are you supporting someone? Or are you unconsciously creating a dynamic where they depend on you? These realizations can be deeply uncomfortable because they challenge identities that have existed for years. Yet they also create extraordinary freedom. Letting go of an illusion often hurts before it heals, but healing becomes possible only after the illusion has been seen. Although every sign will feel the effects of this transit, 3 signs stand closest to its center. For Scorpio, Taurus, and Leo, the messages arriving now carry unusual urgency. The energy does not arrive as a gentle suggestion. It arrives as a wake-up call. For Scorpio placements, whether sun, moon, or rising, the moon is moving through your first house, the domain connected to identity, self-expression, and personal authority. While others may experience this energy as overwhelming, there is a part of you that recognizes it immediately. It feels familiar because Scorpio energy speaks your native language. Recent weeks may have felt mentally exhausting. Activity surrounding your 8th and 9th houses has encouraged deep reflection, intense questioning, and endless analysis. You've been searching for answers, turning possibilities over repeatedly, examining every angle while delaying decisive action. That cycle begins to break now. The message arriving for Scorpio is centered on personal authority. The transit highlights every area where you have minimized yourself, every moment you softened your presence to avoid making others uncomfortable, every situation where you remained silent despite knowing exactly what needed to be said. It reveals where you have been negotiating away your own power. With Pluto, your ruling planet, under pressure from the Cancer Sun, the lesson becomes impossible to miss. The universe is no longer encouraging you to wait for approval, validation, or permission from anyone else. The time for hesitation is ending, and the next step requires you to fully occupy the space that already belongs to you. For some people, this period arrives as a challenge. For Scorpio, Taurus, and Leo placements, it arrives as a turning point. The energy moving through the sky is no longer asking for observation. It is asking for action. For Scorpio placements, whether Sun, Moon, or Rising, the Moon is traveling through your first house, drawing attention toward identity, self-expression, and personal authority. Recent weeks may have felt like an endless cycle of analysis. You have examined possibilities from every angle, revisited decisions repeatedly, and questioned your next move more times than you can count. Yet there comes a moment when reflection stops being useful and begins becoming avoidance. This transit highlights that moment. The message emerging now revolves around ownership of your own power. Areas of life where you have minimized yourself become impossible to ignore. Perhaps you have remained silent when your voice was needed. Perhaps you have reduced your ambitions to avoid creating discomfort for others. Perhaps you have been waiting for circumstances to become perfect before stepping forward. The current alignment suggests that waiting is no longer the lesson. With Pluto, the ruler of Scorpio, under pressure from the Cancer Sun, there is an invitation to reclaim influence over your own direction. If there is a professional opportunity that deserves your attention, move toward it. If there is a standard that needs to be established, establish it. If there is a truth that requires expression, speak it. Yet there is an important distinction here. Strength is not the same as domination. Awareness is not the same as aggression. The insight arriving through this transit becomes most powerful when used to create clarity rather than conflict. The goal is not to overpower others. The goal is to stop abandoning yourself. For Taurus placements, the focus shifts toward the 7th house, the area associated with committed partnerships, agreements, and significant one-on-one connections. This is where the Scorpio Moon directs its attention, and it does so with remarkable intensity. Taurus naturally values stability. Familiarity often feels safer than uncertainty, even when the familiar situation has long since stopped serving your growth. Yet the landscape changed when Chiron entered Taurus on June 19th. Themes connected to self-worth, personal value, and emotional boundaries have become increasingly difficult to ignore. Now the Scorpio Moon activates that process. Partnerships are viewed through a different lens. The balance of giving and receiving becomes more obvious. Emotional exchanges that once seemed acceptable may suddenly feel uneven. Dynamics that survived because nobody addressed them may now require direct examination. There is likely one connection in particular that demands your attention. Deep down, you already recognize where the conversation needs to happen. The Venus trine. Saturn alignment on June 25th suggests that honesty becomes the pathway to stability rather than the threat to it. Relationships built on authenticity grow stronger. Agreements, supported by mutual respect, become more secure. If something cannot withstand transparency, the weakness existed long before this transit arrived. What is happening now is simply making it visible. For Leo placements, the emphasis falls within the 4th house, the most private region of the chart. This territory governs home, family, emotional roots, and the version of yourself that exists beyond public perception. At the same time, the Sun, your ruling planet, continues its journey through Cancer while engaging challenging interactions with both Neptune and Pluto. As a result, questions surrounding emotional foundations become increasingly important. Leo energy often shines naturally in public settings. There is a gift for confidence, creativity, and visibility, yet every visible identity rests upon an invisible foundation. The current Scorpio moon directs attention toward that foundation. It asks whether the image you present to the world accurately reflects your inner reality. It asks whether you have been carrying pressures privately while projecting strength publicly. It asks whether certain fears, doubts, or creative desires have remained hidden because vulnerability felt too risky. The timing matters because Jupiter is approaching the final degrees of Cancer and preparing to enter Leo on June the 30th. This marks the beginning of a major cycle associated with expansion, recognition, opportunity, and personal growth. However, expansion works best when it is built upon authenticity. The opportunities associated with Jupiter are most effective when they support something real. This transit therefore acts like a preparation phase. It encourages you to release self-doubt, stop hiding meaningful parts of yourself, and move closer to alignment between your private identity and your public expression. The message for Leo is not about becoming someone new. It is about becoming more fully yourself. As this Scorpio moon uncovers what has been hidden beneath the surface, it creates the conditions for the next chapter to unfold with greater honesty, greater confidence, and far greater potential than before. There is one final piece of this story that deserves your attention because it may determine how the next chapter unfolds. The Scorpio moon is not merely about revelation, it is about response. What matters now is not only what becomes visible, but what you choose to do once you see it. Over the next several days, the cosmic atmosphere continues evolving. On June 29th, Mercury begins its retrograde phase in Cancer, while a full moon reaches culmination in Capricorn. These developments carry significant weight because they shift attention away from discovery and toward accountability. Mercury retrograde in Cancer tends to revisit unfinished emotional matters. Conversations that were postponed often return. Feelings that were pushed aside seek expression. Memories, patterns, and unresolved dynamics move back into focus, asking for a second look. At the same time, the Capricorn full moon introduces a very different energy. Capricorn is concerned with structure, responsibility, results, and long-term sustainability. It asks a simple question: what in your life is truly strong enough to support your future? That question becomes especially important after the revelations of the Scorpio moon. Anything exposed during this period represents information that can be used constructively. Areas requiring attention can be strengthened. Relationships requiring honesty can be improved. Decisions requiring courage can finally be made. The opportunity exists to build something more authentic than what existed before. However, when awareness is repeatedly ignored, the lessons often return in a more visible form. The symbolism of Capricorn is not punishment, it is reality. It reveals whether foundations are capable of supporting what is being built upon them. If a structure is strong, it becomes stronger. If weaknesses exist, they become impossible to overlook. This is why the current period feels so important. The Scorpio moon uncovers what has been hidden. Mercury retrograde invites reflection. The Capricorn full moon asks for practical alignment between truth and action. For many people, the greatest challenge will not be discovering the truth. Deep down, they already know it. The challenge will be trusting what they know. Perhaps that is why the atmosphere has felt unusual recently. Maybe conversations have carried more emotional weight than normal. Maybe old memories have appeared unexpectedly. Maybe certain relationships, goals, or commitments no longer feel the way they once did. These experiences often occur when an internal shift is already underway. Long before the conscious mind forms conclusions, the deeper layers of awareness begin gathering information. Intuition notices patterns. The body detects tension. Emotions respond to realities that logic has not yet organized into words. What appears sudden is often the result of a process that has been unfolding quietly for much longer than anyone realizes. As the Scorpio Moon continues its journey, the invitation is not to fear what is revealed. The invitation is to welcome clarity. Clarity may feel uncomfortable for a moment, but uncertainty can last for years. Truth may challenge an old story, but it also creates the possibility of a better one. The days ahead offer an opportunity to look directly at what is real, not what is convenient, not what is familiar, not what others expect. What is real. And once that happens, something remarkable becomes possible. Energy that was previously spent maintaining illusions can finally be redirected toward growth. Emotional weight that was carried unnecessarily can be released. Choices become clearer. Direction becomes stronger. Confidence becomes rooted in authenticity rather than appearance. The shift many people have been sensing is not the end of something meaningful. In many cases, it is the beginning. The Scorpio Moon simply opens the door. What happens next depends on whether you are willing to walk through it. Thank you for spending this time here. If this message resonated with you, consider sharing your thoughts and experiences. Your perspective may help someone else navigating a similar chapter. And if you enjoy exploring astrology, personal growth, and cosmic cycles, stay connected for future insights. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep moving toward what is true.